I'm tired of working. Okay, let these robots handle everything. Let's cut some universal basic income checks or figure out another system that works monetarily or non-monetarily in this case and make sure everybody's needs are met. That's simple. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Urban FinTech at the G Spot Studios channel, where we try to make finance and technology sexy. I'm your girl, G. So the other day, I was on the phone with my brother who was not born here in the United States. And he has a very interesting take on how he sees the global world, the global markets, which I really appreciate. And so I talk to him often to get his sentiment and to get just another perspective on the way things are moving across the globe. And even more than ever now, there's so many changes underway. And so we know all of this mostly is happening through a technological lens. And so I wanted to talk about something that he and I discussed. The economy has flourished, particularly within the United States, sort of its historical economic way in which they operated to where we are now today, and how it has changed and probably will forever change in the next 10 years. Nothing like we've ever seen before. So the idea of humans as capital is a journey through history showing how different eras have treated people. They've treated them more as a key resource, from being literal property to a source of brain power. So that's sort of the timeline in which we've looked at sort of the human capital aspect over the years. Now with AI, now with robots on the rise, we're approaching the next big change, one that might remove humans from the labor equation altogether. And so that's something I wanted to talk about today, just looking at a little bit of the history of how humans contributed to and how our whole economic system, capitalism, is really built off of labor, starting with slave labor onto worker labor, onto where we'll be looking at in the future. Picture this, uh, era one, right? A plantation owner in the past, he didn't just see a person, they saw a piece of equipment, a living tool for farming. And this is what they saw in human beings. In this brutal system, enslaved people weren't just workers, they were owned assets, bought and sold like cattle. Their value was based on the amount of work their body could produce over their lifetime. Their skills, their strength, their entire existence was a number on a ledger, not their own. It was the most dehumanizing and obvious example of treating people as property. All right. So we're talking about the slave era. Now, fast forward some changes, some presidents, some understanding how the economy will work, the union wanting to save that and not have the country be divided. And so we get into era two, where you have humans as factory parts. And so this is essentially the Industrial Revolution. So fast forward to the Industrial Revolution, instead of a field, imagine a manufacturing building. Here, people weren't owned, but they were still treated like parts of a machine. The factory boss saw their workers as a replaceable resource, a pair of hands to operate a machine, a body to stand on an assembly line. And a lot of days we can say that this happens now. You know, you still have people that are in the factory manufacturing business. This was a step up from slavery, but it still reduced people to their productive function. If you could find someone else to do the same job for less money, then you would. The threat of automation in this era was crude, but very, very real. New machinery could eliminate jobs entirely. And so you saw a lot of fearfulness from people who wanted to be able to just maintain a source of income to take care of their families. And so that would be the Industrial Revolution period. So era three is an era that I think came after industrial revolution. Some people beg to differ, but I think there was a huge push towards social services and being able to provide support from a humanistic standpoint for people. So humans as a precious resource as it relates to social services um, sort of happened as economies grew and they grew more complex. Companies and governments realized they needed smarter, healthier workers at this point, right? You can't just treat people like shit and think they're going to show up and just like produce outstanding results. Um, it was no longer enough to just have a strong body. So social services emerged as a way to invest in this human capital, right? So this is a way to kind of, okay, we're using the bodies of these human beings and as workers, but how do we make sure that we keep them strong, being able to produce and being productive and even intelligent, because you need a an amount of intellect to do a lot of these other roles, and so you want to make sure that you're investing in your human capital at this point. So think of it like a company buying insurance for its factory equipment. Again, people were still just a step away from slavery. And some people will argue right now that's still the case. So, for example, a government funded school teaches basic reading and math, creating a more capable workforce. This is like sharpening a tool so it's more effective, right? And so investing in your human capital. When people get health care, for example, they stay healthier longer, which means they can keep working and producing more for more years. This extends the lifespan of the asset. So, again, human beings as capital, human capital, they're an asset. So, you invest in healthcare, you invest in time off, personal time off, holidays, etc., to keep them coming back and to keep them content. All right, so now we're moving in this era for where I would say probably started happening sometime in the 2000s, early to mid 2000s, and to where we are today. And as we continue on sort of this timeline, the trajectory of these technological advances happening will happen much, much faster, much more rapidly. All right, so the future, this is where we're at. What happens when machines have brains now, right? And so this is where things get truly, truly different. What happens when AI and robots can do the creative, strategic, and complex thinking better than we can? And we're already seeing that happen. All right, so a replacement effect is what will happen. It's like a factory full of robots that can also design their own product. The human designers and factory workers are no longer needed. A robot chef could whip up a five-star meal based on an algorithm that analyzes the perfect flavor combinations, and a human chef is left without a job. That's just how quick that happens. And although I want people to feel as though they're secure and stable as far as being able to economically, financially support themselves and their families, guess who's here for all this? Me, me. I'm tired of working. Okay, let these robots handle everything. Let's cut some universal basic income checks or figure out another system that works monetarily or non-monetarily in this case, and make sure everybody's needs are met. That's simple. All right, so the value of work disappears in this model. If our value as capital is based on our ability to work and create, what happens when the ability is no longer unique to us? The social contract that said you work, you earn will be broken, essentially. We will have to figure out a new purpose for ourselves and a new way to distribute wealth when the machines are doing all the work. And I think, like, in my mind, there has been a lot of research around this already of sort of how to move people to this next phase. And likewise, there's always been resistance. There's always been social justice movements around labor, around exploitation, around mistreatment, you name it. And so I can imagine within the tech era that there may be also some issues that may arise around maybe algorithmic bias and the erosion of dignity. So in the digital age, social justice movements are fighting against new forms of dehumanization and commodification. Activists are exposing how new technologies, including AI, can encode existing racial and economic biases, which we've seen. The tech era view of human capital, that data is a valuable asset, so often overlooks privacy and the human cost of surveillance. I did another video about basically how we're being watched, by the United States government. Um, and then dignity versus data. And we know data is huge. Today's movement challenges the idea that a human being's value is determined by their data profile or algorithmic score. Okay, so organizations fight for human rights in the digital sphere, demanding that technology be designed with human dignity and equity in mind, not just profit. So once we get away from this whole profit mentality, money over bros, so to speak, right? Because we're all brothers and sisters of this earth. Um, but until we understand that that is the importance and building astronomical wealth is secondary, if not even important and significant, really, then the minds will shift and people will begin to change, and we can have a more socially um, utopian like society. We can have a more economically balanced, financially equitable society. We can have people who are living not beyond their means, but that have their needs met. That society can exist. Hey, thanks so much for the like, share, and subscribe. So, with the understanding of the foresight that the future will be very different, labor will look very different, workers will look very different, I am actually excited about it. I think, um, in the grand scheme of things, when you think about really how finite amount of time we have here on earth, and even people, our predecessors, how harsh of conditions they lived in and had to work through, and just did that day in and day out, just hard tack living. You know what I'm saying? Um, it's different now. And with the advent of technology and robots and artificial intelligence and supercomputers, like, I'm so here for that. Make my life easier. I don't want to get up and have to go to work and slave and do all these things for 40 hours when it only takes me 25. It's just different now. It's time for change. I'm here for the change. I want to know if you are too. Let me know how you feel about the future of where we're headed technologically. Is it a sexy thing or is it somewhat scary? See you next time.